This piston filler is made in China. You can find it on Amazon or eBay. Typically, they're going to dispense about 32 ounces of volume, and this is a basic design that'll cost you around $500 to $800. Now with this design, if you're looking like what's going on here, well, let me tell you about it. So this end over here on my side, this end would actually sit down into your product. So you would have a tube that would start here and then drop down into whatever tank you're trying to fill out of. Now be mindful that this is a Teflon piston in here with silicone O-rings, so you need to be mindful of the temperature you're trying to fill at so that your piston itself doesn't start sticking, and that creates inconsistent fills. So as your product enters through this port, it's going to get sucked back by this piston rod here, and as it's getting sucked back, there's a plunger gate. And what I mean by plunger gate is there's a valve in here that opens and closes to allow particulate to flow in a one-way direction. So with the one-way direction, we're then pushing the product into this cylinder, and then the product will then get dispensed out of the other side using the same sort of one-way piston drive, and then it'll go to the metering / plunger. So why they do the transfer to the plunger is due to the consistency of the head pressure. So this helps monitor head pressure going into your jars. There's two different air valves on the back of here. So this runs pneumatic and off of electricity. So it does have its pros and cons that way. And then this machine also is using some mixed metals that I'll talk about here shortly. But anywho, this then is the plunger gate that will control how fast the gate opens, and then it times with these two mechanisms here to tell you how fast you're wanting to push your particulate out. So with the proper timing here and here, you can ensure that you don't have any splash coming out of your product as you fill. When we go into the cleaning procedures, I'll kind of talk to you more about the pros and cons of having machines like this, and then I'll discourage you, unfortunately, when you grow your operation, you need to get away from using areas that are hard to clean down. In your standard operating procedures, you'll have potentially hours in clean down, where I'll show you equipment that you could have a half hour in clean down just by the way the equipment's designed, and it's meant to do more than just a clean in place at the end of the day. And that's what I can tell you. So to break this down, we're actually using multiple different threading. So we have your traditional screw threading with a gasket in here. This would need to get removed at the end of the day. These 4 bolts pull out. This the neck breaks off. Your seals come out, and everything needs to get cleaned down properly at the end of every single shift. Now, if we want to turn the machine around, I'm going to show you how it gets metered. So the metering mechanism is in the rear here, and it actually spins, and there's a magnet on the interior of the cylinder wall that communicates with a magnet on the exterior of the cylinder wall that says, hey, push this far and no further. So what people will do in the industry is they'll spin this dial and get your metering correct, and then you will execute your weigh. And once you have your correct weigh in, then you'll know your metering is dialed in. This is a very, very, very basic way of doing it, and this is a way that you could potentially start your operation out. This is a very economical filler, but like I said, it comes with its cons as well that need to be kept in mind. So the tear down on this is very aggressive, and also the cylinder and piston aren't made with too much care and love. And so I'm going to show one last picture of this before we end on this filler. But this interior is a piston. So this piston is made out of a material called Teflon. Teflon can only handle a certain temperature, and then it can also only handle certain materials. So if you're processing pretty acidic materials on a regular basis, you're probably going to eat at that head, or you're going to have to use some sort of alcohol to keep it clean on a regular basis, but it's not something I would recommend. So to operate this and to operate the machines moving forward, all you have to do is either use a foot pedal or a hand trigger, which is common in the industry, or you can flip it on auto. So once you have your machine calibrated and your viscosity level adjusted for the machine you're using, you'll be able to realize how fast the machine can go. And everyone, or some people might say, this can do 100 a minute. Well, depends how much fluid you're trying to displace, into what size of jar, what type of jar, because if I have a long neck on a jar, I'm gonna do a nice slow plunge so that no operators are getting squirt out the top on the top end of the fill. This also has a built-in pressure regulator. The pressure regulator is a must, and what this is gonna allow you to do is regulate the pressure to your device, along with monitor the cleanliness and the dryness of your air. Every one of your pieces of equipment should have a purification step and a regulator on it. Otherwise, you're taking a risk of potentially contaminating product, because you are utilizing air that could potentially come into contact potentially with food products, and so you never want to run oilers or anything. And you can see they're running a lubrication cycle on here. That's probably a food grade lube, but it's not something that I would recommend. So these are all things you need to take in mind when you're trying to size your equipment, to know what piece of equipment is the right size for your operation. And one thing I can tell you is oversize and overbuild.